Do you have Scottish blood running through you right now, and you don't even know it? Somewhere in a mailbox, a passport, a school record, or a family Bible sits a name that once meant something far more dangerous than a surname. It was shouted across battlefields, carved into clan charters, and hunted by kings who feared what it represented. 10 surnames connect directly to Scotland's bloodiest rivalries, its most powerful clans, and one royal house whose bloodline still sits on a throne today. The final name on this list did not just survive Scotland's history, it became the crown that ruled it. Number 10. Fraser. This name sounds almost too soft for what it actually carries. The older form likely arrived through Norman settlers, families who entered Scotland through land grants, and quietly built one of the most enduring Highland power bases in the country. Land charters place Fraser territory in the northeast, a region that became a battleground during centuries of clan rivalry and royal politics. That already complicates things. A name assumed purely Highland actually began as a foreign import that rooted itself so deeply it became inseparable from Highland identity. The proof anchor here is brutal. Fraser clansmen were devastated at Culloden, one of the last and bloodiest stands of the Jacobite cause, a battle that shattered the old clan system permanently. Most people never hear that part. They know the tartan. They do not know the name survived near annihilation. But the next name did not fall at Culloden. The next name built the very castles other clans were dying to control. Number 9. Gordon. The Gordon name is commonly linked to a place name rather than a person. A border territory whose families rose through land control and royal service into some of the powerful noble titles in the north. Charters and church registers trace Gordon expansion through marriage alliances and crown favor, eventually producing the Marquesses of Huntly, a family so dominant they were sometimes called the uncrowned kings of the north. That is not a small detail. This is a family that ruled through influence rather than open rebellion, controlling territory the crown itself struggled to manage directly. The twist is that Gordon power survived religious upheaval, civil war, and repeated confiscation of land, rebuilding itself again and again through political adaptation rather than the sword. A name that looks like a simple place name hides a family that mastered the art of surviving every regime change Scotland produced. The next name did not survive through politics. It survived through blood feuds so violent the crown eventually had to intervene. Number 8. Macleod. If this is your surname, the older records point towards something older than most Scottish clans. The name traces to Norse Gaelic roots, meaning son of Leod, a lineage historically associated with Viking settlement in the Hebrides. That is the first twist. A name that sounds fully Gaelic actually preserves a Norse bloodline, carried through seafaring families who settled and intermarried into the Western Islands centuries earlier than most clan histories admit. Clan traditions and island charters connect Macleod power to castle strongholds like Dunvegan, one of the oldest continuously inhabited castles in Scotland, still tied to the same family today. That is not just history. That is an unbroken chain most surnames cannot claim. The name also carries one of Scotland's strangest proof anchors, a preserved relic known as the fairy flag, tied to clan legend and battlefield protection. Families with this name were not just Highlanders. They were the last visible thread of Viking Scotland. The next name did not come from longships. It came from a bloodline the crown eventually tried to erase entirely. Number 7. Sinclair. This surname carries Norman origin, but do not let that fool you into thinking it is simple. The name is historically associated with the Earls of Orkney and Caithness, a family whose territory once bordered Norse-controlled lands, forcing them into constant negotiation between Scottish and Scandinavian power. Land grants and royal genealogies trace Sinclair influence into some of the most strategically important coastal territory in Scotland. The strongest proof anchor tied to this name is Rosslyn Chapel, a site wrapped in centuries of legend involving hidden carvings, secret societies, and disputed medieval mysteries. Most people never hear that part. They know the myths. They do not know the family behind them controlled real, contested, dangerous borderland for generations. The twist is that Sinclair power depended on balancing two hostile crowns at once, Scottish and Norse, without collapsing into either side's war. That is not survival by luck. That is survival by calculation. The next name did not balance kingdoms. The next name fought openly against the very crown protecting it. Number 6. Douglas. The Douglas name became one of the most feared in medieval Scotland, and the older annals tell you exactly why. Families with this name rose through military service, becoming so powerful that they were sometimes called the Black Douglases, a branch whose influence rivaled the Scottish crown itself. Royal records show repeated crown attempts to break Douglas power through confiscation, exile, and outright warfare, proof that this family was not simply loyal nobility. This is where the story turns darker. The crown did not fear Douglas because they were disloyal outsiders. The crown feared them because they were too powerful to control from the inside. That is not a small detail. That is a family, the monarchy itself, considered a genuine threat to royal authority. The twist is that despite repeated attempts to crush their influence, Douglas branches survived, adapted, and re-entered positions of power for generations afterward. A name is not supposed to outlast a crown's attempt to destroy it. This one did. The next name did not threaten the crown from inside Scotland. The next name became the face of resistance against an occupying one. Number 5. Wallace. If your family carries this name, you have likely heard it your entire life without knowing what it once meant. The older form is usually understood as pointing to a foreigner, specifically a Welsh-speaking Briton living among Scots, a stranger who became one of the most Scottish names in existence. That is the twist. A name born from being an outsider became the very symbol of Scottish resistance. Families with this name were historically associated with the borderlands, the contested strip between Scotland and England fought over for centuries. Border records and clan histories tie Wallace families to open rebellion against English occupation, a name that once meant defiance carved directly into hostile frontier land. That is not a small detail. But the older records tell a stranger story beyond the legend. The name spread through migration, exile, and famine, carried by families who left Scotland but never let go of what it represented. The next name did not fight against power. It became the power everyone else feared. Number 4. Campbell. This name looks ordinary today, but the older records point towards something heavier. It is historically associated with one of the most feared clans in Highlands Scotland, and the name itself is commonly linked to a Gaelic root meaning crooked mouth, a political warning rather than a physical description. Families with this name expanded through alliance and royal favor, enforcing crown authority in territory that resisted centralized control. The darkest proof anchor here is the massacre of Glencoe, where Campbell forces, acting under crown orders, turned against a rival clan under the disguise of hospitality. A name tied to loyalty became forever tied to betrayal. But the twist is this. Campbell power was built on legal skill and political survival across centuries of Highland collapse, not brutality alone. The next name did not serve the crown. It once ruled a sea kingdom no map today fully remembers. Number 3. Macdonald. If this is your surname, your family may descend from something larger than a clan. The name derives from Donald, meaning world ruler, and once belonged to the Lords of the Isles, a Gaelic sea kingdom controlling the western coastline almost independently of the crown. Old charters describe this territory running its own laws and fleets, at times rivaling the King of Scots directly. This is the same family hunted at Glencoe, targeted by the political machine built around royal centralization. The twist most people miss is that the name did not disappear when the lordship collapsed. It split, migrated, crossed into Ireland, and later spread across North America, carrying fragments of a lost sea kingdom onto new coastlines. The next name will not sound like a king's name at all, until you learn what it produced. Number 2. Bruce. This name does not look Gaelic, and that is exactly the point. It traces to Norman origins, brought into Scotland through conquest rather than native lineage. A family that arrived as outsiders and ended up producing a king. The proof anchor could not be stronger. This is the surname of Robert the Bruce, whose campaign against English occupation produced the decisive victory at Bannockburn, reshaping Scottish sovereignty permanently. A family that entered as outsiders ended up defining independence itself. The twist runs deeper than the famous king. Bruce branches spread through land grants and later migration, meaning modern bearers are not automatically descended from the king, but belong to a surname tradition permanently woven into Scottish nationhood. And now we come to the name that changes the scale of everything on this list. Number 1. Stuart. If this is your surname, you are connected to a royal dynasty that once ruled Scotland, then England, with descendants tied to the British monarchy today. The name originally referred to a court position, a steward managing land and authority for the crown. That is the twist. This was a servant's title, but the family holding it became the crown itself. Royal genealogies trace the Stuart rise from administrators to the ruling house of Stuart, eventually claiming the English throne through marriage and inheritance, uniting both crowns under one house. Mary, Queen of Scots, and her son James both carried this name into some of the most documented royal lineages in British history. A name that started as a job title inside a castle became one of the most consequential bloodlines in Europe. And that lineage did not vanish. Through documented royal descent, it continues into the family occupying the British throne today. These 10 names were never just labels on paper. They were compressed histories, carrying kingdoms, betrayals, rebellions, migrations, and royal bloodlines inside ordinary spelling. A surname on a passport can trace back to a border rebellion. A name on a mailbox can trace back to a sea kingdom that once rivaled a crown. A name whispered at a family dinner table can trace back to a household office that became a monarchy. Surnames are not decoration. They are survival written in letters, carried through conquest, exile, migration, and centuries of pressure most people never think about. Somewhere in your family's name, a piece of this pattern may already be sitting quietly, waiting to be noticed. So, tell me your surname. Tell me your family's origin, your clan, your region, the migration story passed down at your own dinner table, or the name you want decoded next. Because the next hidden kingdom might be sitting inside a name you have carried your entire life without ever knowing what it once meant.